Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. You have many years of experience dealing with abusive men. Is that correct?
Yes.
If so, wouldn't by far the majority of men you have known throughout your career be abusive?
Actually, I have lots of male friends and my own family members and my son. So I've got lots of male people in my life that aren't abusive, including a co-facilitator that I've worked with for over 20 years in West LA, and a co-facilitator that I started with in 1980 that we work very closely together for 28 years, and he just retired. And I've worked with a range of men. Some of them are anger management, and I've also have men in my private practice that where domestic violence isn't an issue at all. I have a broad-based private practice. I work with people on a variety of issues.
Is it possible your view of men in general is skewed or biased toward being abusive?
I don't think so. I got a great dad. He was here yesterday. I've got a great brother. I've got a great son. I've got great brother-in-laws. I have some very, I think, very significant men in my life, male friends, people I've worked with in the probation department, people I've worked with in criminal justice, people I've worked with doing training. I've got lots of male friends, so I would have to say probably I wouldn't be able to work.
Objection, you haven't spoken, but she's skewed.
Overruled. You may complete your statement.
I don't think I would be able to work with people who are violent, and that includes some women as well. I don't think I'd be able to do that if I didn't have a good balance in my own life of people who are positive role models and mentors in my own life.
Did you read all of Jodi's and Travis's journals during the time they were in their relationship, or just the portions provided to you?
I only received the portions of anything. All I got was what was provided to me. I didn't know if that was all that was available or not, but what I had was provided to me.
Do you believe it is possible that Travis said some of the negative things he said to Jodi because he was afraid of her stalking him and he wanted to distance himself from her?
No. No, I don't believe that.
In your opinion, did Travis ever sound angry in his journals?
No, I don't believe he sounded angry in his journals.
Did Travis speak negatively of any of the women he was seeing in his journals?
In his journals?
In his journals.
Not in the journals that I read, no.
In the magazine subscriptions you had sent to Jodi in jail, she wrote hidden messages in them intended for someone. Were those messages for you?
I had no idea she wrote hidden messages to anyone, and I certainly didn't receive any.
If the defendant feels she has a high IQ, is it possible she would try to outsmart psychological tests?
It
didn't appear that she outsmarted them, if that was her intent.
Not responsive. She's asked, is it possible, not whether or not she did.
She should be allowed to explain her answer.
Overruled. Answer the question.
It didn't appear in reading what either report wrote that if she intended to, that she did. So I don't see that if she did try, she wasn't successful, and I don't know whether she would have tried or not. It didn't appear to me that she tried to outsmart me, but, you know.
Jodi's old friend stated she was manipulative and liked to play the victim. Even though it was high school, is it possible that those traits stayed with Jodi as she got older?
Two things, a correction. Her friend was from elementary school, not from high school.
Objection is characterized as manipulative. That was on June 13th of 2008.
Let me
Characterizes
reread
that.
the question. I'm going to reread the question.
Okay.
Jody's old friend stated she was manipulative and liked to play the victim. Even though it was high school, isn't it possible those traits stayed with her as she got older?
I don't have evidence of that. I don't have evidence of that from,
Objection, non-responsive to the question. If,
Is it possible
is it possible?
those traits stayed with Jody as she got older?
anything's possible. I don't have evidence of that.
Have you seen any proof that Jody was physically abused by Travis other than her finger that she claims Travis broke?
No, I haven't.
Is there any reason we should believe that Jody has not manipulated you as she has others?
I'm not sure who you believe she's manipulated.
Objection beyond the scope of the question. Should ask.
Sustained.
I think can we approach?
Yes. Is there any reason we should believe that Jody has not manipulated you as she has others?
I didn't use Jodi as my evidence. I used so many other things to look at.
Objection, non-responsive to the question.
Overruled.
So I don't believe that Jodi manipulated me because the areas I looked at were corroborated by other people. So, I mean, it's possible. I also don't have any evidence that she's been manipulating people. So I'm not sure where that actually came from. She's not been described as manipulative by others.
Sustained. Why have you looked at Miss Arias multiple times during the cross-examination with the prosecutor when there were breaks and sidebars to meet eyes with Jodi and give her a small, warm smile?
I have done that on occasion, just to acknowledge her, but no other reason. I've given maybe,
Objection beyond the scope.
Overruled.
I maybe given warm, I have friends that have been coming from, friends of mine from elementary school, and I look in a direction, and it doesn't necessarily mean I'm looking at Miss Arias. I know I've looked at her a couple times, but I've actually tried to avoid looking at Miss Arias. And I have looked at my friends who've been in the front row, and Maria there, and whatever, and I've smiled at them. But I haven't spent a lot of time looking at Miss Arias and smiling at her.
Do you have personal feelings for Jodi or feel sorry for her?
I have feelings. I have liked Jodi in terms of working with her and in terms of having a cooperative relationship with her. But I mean, we haven't had a relationship other than the 44 hours that I've spent in jail with her. So we don't have a friendship, we don't have a relationship other than that. And I've had that relationship with other people that I have worked with who have been in jail as well. I'm pretty clear on my own boundaries, so I don't think that's been a problem. And I absolutely, if I thought that that would get in my way, in the same way I do with my clients, if something personal would get in my way of having an effective relationship, I would step away from it.
On April 9th, at approximately 11:33 a.m., when discussing Jodi being manipulative at the Purple Plum and what the witness said about Jodi, what the waitress said about Jodi, when the prosecutor was marking the exhibit, you looked at Jodi, gave a half smile, and shrugged your shoulders. Why do you keep doing this?
Wow, I didn't even know I was doing it. Truthfully, I do shrug my shoulders, I do, but I don't even remember doing that. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that question.
Considering the lies Jodi told after killing Travis, why would you believe the things she told you happened before the killing?
I believe those things because of the corroborative data, not because of what Jodi told me or didn't tell me. I've got data that corroborates many of the things that she said in terms of what happened. I don't have data, as I said. I don't have any, I wasn't there during any of the physical incidents. But because much of what was said was corroborated by other sources, I believe those things that are corroborated, and they paint a picture.
Hypothetically, if you were to discover that Jodi had actually exaggerated rather than understated the physical abuse events that she told you about, do you think it is possible that you would need to revise your opinion on the degree or severity of the abuse within the relationship? Please explain.
I would certainly re-look at things because that would be important. But I also am really looking at the kind of rage and escalation that happens with Mr. Alexander in this very intimate relationship, and sort of the leading up to different things in relationships that are very, very much less intimate than the ones he's had with, than the ones with other women. And I also look at the degree of abuse in his childhood. I look at the fact that he writes, I don't like whores.
That should be out of scope.
You may continue. You may continue.
Okay. So it's not just looking at what Jodi says. It's looking at what Mr. Alexander says. It's looking at Mr. Alexander's behavior. I don't think somebody has to be perfect to be a battered woman or to be a victim of abuse. I think we can not like some of the things about that person. I think we cannot like their attitude or how they appear to us or the way we judge them. I certainly don't like every victim of abuse I've ever worked with, but it doesn't mean they weren't victims of abuse. And for me, that's what I want to look at, not what I personally feel about somebody, but do I believe this really happened to them?
In a verbal discussion, often facial expressions and body language can be seen, and tone or inflection can be heard. Additionally, in an interview, clarifying statements can be made and clarifying questions asked. Do you agree?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
In a verbal discussion, often facial expressions and body language can be seen, and tone or inflection can be heard. Additionally, in an interview, clarifying statements can be made and clarifying questions asked. Do you agree?
Yes.
When assessing this case, to which did you give more weight, written or verbal communications?
Well, I had more written information. So I gave more weight to the written information than I had. In terms of the physical interaction, that would be with Jodi Arias, and that was in jail, sometimes behind a screen where you really couldn't see. You started looking cross-eyed after a while, so for me, I couldn't even always see clearly. So that, I could go with inflection and tone and that sort of thing, but it was a very uncomfortable kind of environment to spend that many hours in. So I actually, because I had so much more written information, I relied more on the written information.
Do you feel that being unable to interview Travis Alexander gives Jodi Arias an unfair advantage in telling their shared story of abuse?
I wish I could have interviewed Travis Alexander. As I said, I got the information, and I think part of the information that was really important to me at the beginning was from his close friends. And so I got information about him and the way people saw him, and then once again in his own words in his childhood, and then in his own interactions with Jodi Arias and with other women. So I feel like I got a picture of Mr. Alexander.
Are you aware of phone conversations that were made either before, during, or after various series of texts, instant messages, emails that you reviewed?
I am aware that there were phone calls, and I get confused about sometimes which is which. I know there were phone calls, and I'm not sure if those were recorded. I know the phone sex tape was recorded, but beyond that, I don't know if there were recorded messages that I had, or if they were all IMs, texts, and Gmails.
Did you ask Jodi if phone calls were ever part of those exchanges?
Yeah, I think there were follow-up phone calls, or there were phone calls that were made, but I don't have dates on those, that kind of thing.
Of the 18 forensic cases, how many were cases where a male was the victim of abuse and not a perpetrator?
Of the forensic cases that I've done, there was a case where there was...
Sustained. Can you give us numbers?
There were at least two, but I'm not sure. There were at least two. And there was one where the father killed his son-in-law, and the father who did the killing was also a victim.
Sustained. You testified that when conducting a couple assessment, family of origin of both parties is pursued.
Yes.
You pursued family of origin for Travis in assessing him as a perpetrator. However, why did you not assess Jodi's family of origin, considering Jodi as a possible perpetrator of abuse rather than as a victim?
I did assess Jodi's family for abuse. Her level of abuse was lower, much lower than Mr. Alexander's, but oftentimes what we see is that women and men do same-sex role modeling. And so oftentimes the women wind up being victims as opposed to perpetrators. But I didn't rule that out, and I thought Jodi had a fairly dysfunctional family. I thought that on the scale of things that Mr. Alexander's family was far more violent and in far more reaching ways and different kinds of abuse.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take the evening recess at this time. Please be back tomorrow morning. We will start at 9:30. Have a nice evening. Please remember the admonition. Has left the courtroom. Counsel, is there anything else for today? You may. You may step down. a.m., 9 a.m.